This is part 2 of our trigonometry video. We're now going to move on to using these trig functions on the calculator. So on your calculator, you should find the sine, cosine, and tangent buttons as pictured down here. So here's the sin, the cos, and the tan. So if you don't have a graphing calculator, some of you might have to change the order in which you push these. For the graphing calculator, you hit the button sine, you hit the angle measure, and then you hit enter. The other thing you want to check is that your calculator mode is in degrees. So see how mine is in radians? So you hit mode and it takes you to this screen and you're looking for degrees. So then you have to scroll down and then hit over and then turn that button on. So now see how my degrees is clicked? So then if I quit this screen, notice how my answer is going to change when I push enter. Radians is a unit of measure that you use a lot in Algebra 2. We use degrees. So you're going to want to make sure that works. So this is the true answer for that. And remember, we're going to round to 4 decimal places. So if we round that, we're going to change that to 0.9613. Because of that 6 being bigger than a 5, that 2 will turn into a 3. 0.9613. Moving on to cosine of 74. You can clear your screen or leave it. We're going to push the cosine button, then 74, hit enter. So we're looking at rounding 4 decimal places. So I see 27, and then we have to decide if this is 56 or 57. You're right, it's going to stay 56. So 0.27, 56. Try tangent on your own. For rounding, I'm going to change this to 3.4874. Because that 1 is less than 5, I just drop it off and leave it 7.4. Again, make sure your calculator is in degrees when you're using it. On the next slide, you'll get some more practice with using your calculators. So give the approximate values to 4 decimal places. So I'll just do the first one with you, sine of 42, and then you hit enter, and we're looking at 0.6691. So pause the video here. Why don't you do the rest of these 7? When you're ready to see the answers, turn the video back on. Here are your answers. Number 2, 0.9877. Number 3, 0.9703. Number 4, 0.9511. Number 5, 1.0724. Number 6, 0.1564. Number 7, 0.4226. And number 8, 0.4245. On this slide, we're going to find these trig functions for this triangle given the measurements. So in the red set, we're using angle A. So I'm going to mark it. So remember, sine is so. So we're going to do opposite over hypotenuse. So that's 8 roots of 3 over 16. And now we need to simplify that fraction. The 8 and the 16 are numbers that reduce, so they turn into 1/2. So I'm just going to leave the top as root of 3. Remember that 1 is just imaginary. And then the 16 turns into an 8. As a decimal, all we're doing is plugging in the square root of 3. I like to hit enter and then divided by 8. If you don't hit enter, sometimes that radical causes a problem because some of your calculators you need to close that parenthesis. So that's why I like to hit enter. So my answer is 0.8660. You know what? I forgot to change 8 out of 16 should be a 2. That's why. So I want to do the square root of 3 divided by 2. So see, when I do it this way, it keeps that underneath the radical. So square root of 3, and then I have to push forward divided by 2, and then my calculator will give me the 0.8660. Cosine. The cosine of A. Cosine means ka, so we're looking for adjacent 8 over hypotenuse 16. So we reduce to a half for 0.5. Tangent is TOA. So we're looking for opposite 8 roots of 3 over adjacent, which is 8. Reducing our fraction, we get the square root of 3. On a calculator, we get 1.7321. Now we're going to transition to the other angle. The sine is still opposite over hypotenuse, so opposite 8, hypotenuse 16. We already have that one written down, and we can easily do that one in our head. The cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so adjacent is 8 roots of 3 over hypotenuse 16. And again, we already did that one. 8 over 16 turns into a half, so we get rid of 3 over 2 for 0.8660. The last one is tangent, TOA. Going to angle N, looking for opposite 8 over adjacent 8 roots of 3. The 8's reduce, and I get 1 over the root of 3, which will not work, so we have to rationalize it. So I'm going to multiply it by root of 3 over root of 3, which gives me the root of 3 over the root of 9, and I can simplify that to a 3. On a calculator, the square root of 3 divided by 3 turns into, I'm waiting for you to plug it in. Yep, you got it, 0.5774. Please make sure that you got that one right and you got square root of 3 over 2 right. It's really important, especially when you get to algebra 2. So let's get to the real math. Here's a triangle where we have an angle measure. Right angle, we're given the hypotenuse, and we're trying to figure out the measure of this leg. So we're going to use our trig function, so katoa. So I'm going to figure out what relationship I can use. I'm going to mark my angle. I'm looking for the relationship with 33 degrees and x. It looks like this is opposite. The next relationship is with the 14, hypotenuse. So we're thinking, is that sine? Is that cosine? Or is that tangent? You got it, it's sine. So if we write that out, here's how it would look. The sine of 33 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So on a calculator, this sine of 33 is actually a number. The sine of 33. So if I were to divide x by 14, I should get this number 0.5446. The calculator knows that. So we don't want to have an approximated answer. We want an exact answer. So here's how we can do this. We're going to put this over 1, and then we're going to cross multiply. So the sine of 33 touches the 14, and the x touches the 1. So I'm going to start this out as x equals, and now here's kind of a trick with the trig. You have to put your 14 as the lead coefficient times the sine of 33. This way your calculator doesn't get confused. So you're going to multiply 14 times the sine of 33. And notice how I did not include a multiply. It'll just do that. And there's my answer. Again, remember your calculator must be in degrees. The directions tell us to round to the nearest tenth. So it looks like we're getting 7.6. Let's try another one. Here's the angle we're working with. We need to figure out which trig function we can use to find the missing leg. 14 is the hypotenuse, and x is adjacent. So looking for adjacent and hypotenuse, it looks like we're using cosine. So here's how we're going to write that. The cosine of the angle, which is 37, that ratio has to be equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. The A comes first and the H comes second. So adjacent is x, hypotenuse is 14. We're going to turn this into a trig function, or a proportion, excuse me. So it looks like cosine of 37 touches the 14, x touches the 1. So we get x equals 14 times the cosine of 37. One decimal place on your calculators, 11.2. So we're going to try this again. Pause the video, try to get these at least set up and solve if you can, and then we can check your answers. Question 6. It looks like we're set up to use a trig function tangent. So looking at my angle, I have opposite and adjacent, and TOA is tangent. So we're cross multiplying, and this time we get x times the tangent of 72 is equal to 25 times 1. This is a lot different than the last two. We need to get x by itself. So we're going to divide by the tangent of 72. Remember, that's a number. What we do to one side of the equal sign, we do to the other. Tangent of 72. So on our calculator, what this is going to look like is 25 divided by the tangent of 72. So we get 8.12. It says nearest tenth, so we're going to call that 8.1. So this one was different because when we cross multiplied, the trig function touched the x and 25 hit the 1. Let's try another one. So you already tried this. Let's figure out if you have the right trig function. So this one is hypotenuse, and this is adjacent for the cosine trig function. So we're looking at the cosine of 64 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So again, I'm going to put that over 1. When I cross multiply, I get x times 1, and then 11 times the cosine. You have to write the 11 as a scalar first. So 11 times the cosine of 64. So on my calculator, I do 11. You can push the times button if you want. Cosine 64. And you're approximately at 4.8. Remember, this is just day 1 of this lesson. We will try it again tomorrow. This concludes my video on trig functions.